Hey, welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. Our host, JR. Let's talk about what Saban had to say. On3 put a post out. What was it? On, I believe it was, Friday. About 4:30, about some of the comments Nick Saban had on the Pat McAfee Show. They're getting ready for the games this weekend, obviously, and I believe they're there in Sooner, Oklahoma Stadium there. And Nick Saban gets asked about NIL and the Big Ten and their edge and the SEC, because obviously you got a big SEC Big Ten game coming up here. At this point, you already know the results, so we don't need to talk about that. But I guess if you're an SEC fan, you do want us to talk about that, don't you? But I do think it's interesting what Saban had to say here, and I think people are taking it one way. And while I agree you can take it that way, I also think there's another way we need to take this as well. So let's listen to what Saban has to say. I'm going to comment on that. And then Pat McAfee has some comments that he says that I believe are misguided that I want to comment on as well. So let's hear from Nick Saban first.
I think that the SEC was the SEC because of the culture in the South. There wasn't professional football in the South for a long time, and everybody related to the colleges. Okay, we talked about that before. Well, now that doesn't matter. I mean, kids grew up wanting to go to LSU. Kids grew up wanting to go to Alabama. Kids grew up wanting to go to Georgia. Got the money now. They don't mind going to Ohio State. They don't mind going to other places.
Okay, that's the part that is making people so frustrated right now. They got the money now. Well, who had the money before, Nick? Who had the money before? Who was the one given the McDonald's bags with the money and everything else? All the other rumors that we heard and everything else that went on down there in SEC country. Look, it is accurate that a lot of players went to SEC schools because of geography. There is no doubt geography does play a huge role in college football, but in college football recruiting. But in today's day and age, it does not play nearly as big of a role as it once did before. Part of that is money. Don't get me wrong. Part of that is money. But you even look outside of the South and you see players from Ohio. You see players from, Pennsylvania, Illinois. You see players from Wisconsin. They are going all different kinds of other places, not just the home school, not even just Midwest schools. They are going all over the map to different schools. Now, one of the reasons why the South has had a talent advantage in recruiting over, and I'm not talking about like the Southeastern Conference, I'm just talking about the South, like Southern states have had more talent than Northern states, is because outside, year round, you can play this type of stuff, and they don't have an emphasis in some of the other sports that Big Ten states do, right? Hockey, a big sport for a lot of people up north, Wisconsin, Minnesota. You get up into the Northeast and everything, right? Hockey's a big thing up there. Basketball is a bigger deal up here as well. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still really, really good basketball players down south, but it's another sport that kind of brings people to that. But to make this assertion that the northern states just have all the money now, so now they're willing to go to Ohio State. Now they're willing to go to all these other places. It's true in one sense, but it also misses a huge piece in another sense, which is that everybody knows the SEC, Nick Saban in particular, was paying players all the time. Now, maybe he wasn't directly, putting the money in the McDonald's bag, but there were boosters from those schools, Alabama, LSU, name your school. Florida was huge under Urban Meyer, or at least it was rumored to be huge. I shouldn't say that it was for sure, but all these places were allegedly doing this, and it was pretty strong allegations. And it wasn't just geography. There was so much more going into it about keeping players home, number one, and number two, going to get players from other places as well. You look at the number of players from Ohio that used to go to Ohio State. It used to be so easy for Ohio State to lock down the top 5 players in their state. And if they didn't get a top 5 player in their state, he went to Michigan instead, right? Or he went to Michigan State or Pennsylvania. I guess not Michigan State, but maybe they got a few. Penn State, maybe going over to another northern school or something like that. But for the most part, these guys stayed home in the Midwest. It's happening. It's happening with the South now, too. The South can go up and get these guys. USC just got the best cornerback, the two best cornerbacks in Ohio right now, which, Ohio State does a really good job of recruiting, are going to USC and to Texas A&M. I believe Singleton is still committed to Texas A&M. He switched his commitment from Illinois to Texas A&M. But they're going across the country. They're going down south. And so is it just the money? Is it just that geography doesn't matter anymore? Yeah, the money does matter. But it also matters that it's an even playing field with the money as well. Let's listen to what the rest they have to say is.
Places, so that geographic advantage that the Southeast Conference had may be
changing.
That the Big Ten and northern states don't have now either, right? It didn't just happen down south. It's happening across the country.
Changing a little bit.
Yikes.
Now with a different culture, with name, image, and likeness and money involved in decision making. And I think that's
with money involved now. Nick, money's been involved. Sorry, go ahead.
Created it a little bit of an edge for the Big Ten.
I will say this: the Big Ten has a lot of money. Like everybody's going to say what they say about that.
Okay, but let's be honest. The SEC has a ton of money as well. And then the other piece of this is where Pat McAfee goes with this. I believe it's misguided, and he's talking more about the schools and their money here. I shouldn't say no one. It wasn't as big of allegations that the School of Alabama was paying players, right? It was the boosters, the ones that were going off on their own, kind of being rogue. Maybe they got a tip from Nick Saban, like, oh yeah, we really want this guy, so they got involved with them. The amount of people that try to get involved in these recruits' lives, I do not think gets talked about enough. There are people that just yearn and thrive off of even just being connected to some of these 17, 16, 18-year-olds. And it's kind of weird, but they just thrive off of that. And so for some of these boosters to pay all this money, like it was no big deal because it was just the culture of go after these guys. And don't get me wrong, it happened in the Big Ten too. I'm not trying to say that the SEC was the only one doing it. There were a couple schools in the Big Ten that would do this kind of stuff as well, but it was not nearly as rampant as the SEC. And you want to talk about rampant paying players in unconditional ways right now as well. Dudes are getting paid to stay committed to schools, right? The big thing was that dudes were getting paid to go on visits before. Dudes are getting paid to commit and stay committed. Now, dudes are getting contracts given to them in August and saying, sign this and we will pay whatever for you to stay committed. And yeah, anyway, we're going down a whole other rabbit hole doing that. But let's listen to what Pat has to say, because I think it's important to talk about this too.
About that whole thing, but like, I don't think we all understood how much money all of the North has. Big Ten. Like, did we understand that Penn State had all the money?
Oh my gosh. Penn State has all the money. Yeah, for hockey they do. We'll get to that in a second.
I don't think I knew that. Even as somebody that grew up in Pittsburgh, had a lot of friends that were Penn Staters, and obviously a member of that cult. It's like I didn't know they had so much money.
We just knew they were insufferable.
Yeah, and just assumed the South had money too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we assumed. Yeah, exactly. But then you think of Penn State, and it's like they needed $700 million cash to upgrade the stadium. That was like 4 calls for the athletic director, and they're like, "Wait, are we going to win in all the sports? Yeah, okay, we would like to do that. We are sick of talking to the Ohio."
There's an implication here that all this money is just coming from the athletic department, right? Now he's talking about making calls and boosters and stuff like that. But when you compare NIL to stadium upgrades of $700 million and stuff, like, then you're talking about the school paying it, which should be resolved now with revenue sharing, right? But it's not, because you got a lot of other stuff going on.
Ohio State people were sick of talking to the Michigan people. By the way, both of them fully committed, let alone Oregon getting into the game the way that they've gotten into the game.
The problem is, though, is Ohio State's not fully committed like some other schools. All right. This is another piece of it all that doesn't get talked about as much either, is that it's just like, well, this one's fully committed. This one's fully committed. What player on Ohio State did they pay $12 million for to rip away from a Southern school? Right. Yeah, it happened with Michigan, but and I'm not trying to say one way is better than the other. As I've said on this show multiple times, you got the money, use it. Like, if you have the money and you don't use it, I'm pissed off at you, right? If you got the money, use it. But the entire thing is like, well, these schools are just throwing money at some players. It's not. It's not that these schools are just throwing money at other players. It's that the money has been neutralized, right? It's not that the Big Ten just has so much more money. Well, it does. I do think the Big Ten and schools in the Big Ten do primarily have more money than other schools. But I also think the SEC, their schools spend more evenly across the board for this kind of stuff. I think in the Big Ten, you do have the big dogs, Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, USC, like obviously those that are paying the big bucks. But then you also have the schools like Northwestern, Purdue's kind of this way, but they just prioritize basketball more, at least from what I've heard. Maybe if you're a Purdue fan, you tell me different. That's fine. Let me know. UCLA is putting money into it as well, so that's good, but it's also kind of a little different. But like Rutgers, they're not going out there and paying like a Tennessee is or something like that. That's the thing. Like I think if you look at the numbers from the highest payer in the SEC compared to the lowest payer, the margin there is much smaller than what you see like USC and Michigan paying compared to like Northwestern and Rutgers. And again, I'm not so much concerned about how much you pay as much as how much are you raising and how much can you pay that. Because yes, we're all getting these big checks from the Big Ten, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting that check and you're giving it to a booster who's then going to donate it to NIL. Anyway, let's see what the rest of you has to say is.
We assume that a lot of these Big Ten schools will have the capabilities to go. We did assume, though, that the South was going to be able to keep up. I think naturally, I always thought.
Again, that's the problem with this conversation. Well, they would just be able to keep up. They have kept up. That's the difference. They have kept up. You look at basketball right now. Who's spending the most money in basketball? It's the SEC. By far, the SEC is spending the most money in basketball. You look at the talent they're getting, where they're taking players from, who they're adding and everything. It's no secret. The SEC is paying the most money in basketball now. The difference is that the SEC was paying money to players before. Now, that same money that they were paying before is now being utilized, but Ohio State can pay money now. Michigan can pay money now. Illinois can pay money now. USC, Oregon, whoever it is, they can pay money now as well.
Thought that there would be a lot of money from a lot of these schools in the South. It just feels like the Big Ten has more alumni, I guess, with more money, and that's a big part of the game right now.
I think Texas and Texas A&M, probably have that kind of
keep up,
old-fashioned money.
Yeah.
A lot of the schools in the Southeastern Conference don't have that old-time generational wealth. But I just wanted to ask AJ about the money.
All right, that's what we got there. He does go on to ask AJ Hawk about the Ohio State money, and that's a funny conversation. But you can go watch this. I'll put it in the link below. You guys can go watch this part. But anyway, all of this to say, I think that the conversation is being misrepresented here. The idea of, well, the Big Ten just has more money than the SEC. Does the Big Ten have more money than the SEC? Yes, I do think the Big Ten has more money than the SEC. But not everybody in the Big Ten, number one, is using it that same way. And number two, it's a more even playing field now. The SEC previously had more money because the SEC was more willing to put money out there. So it's not just a geographic thing. There is some geography involved because you see players from northern states leaving as well. You see players from California. I mean, they were always leaving, but I'm not trying to disparage USC or UCLA by saying that. It just is a big state with a lot of talent, so USC couldn't keep all of it. They're doing a better job of keeping it now, so good for them. But you hear what I'm saying, right? It's that the SEC had the money, and they were paying it when nobody else was allowed to. And really, they weren't allowed to either, but they were getting away with it. Some schools in the Big Ten were doing it, but not all of them were doing it like teams were in the SEC. And so finally, when it was like, all right, we can make it happen now, the Big Ten slow-rolled it. But once they got the hang of it, once they figured out how to raise it, then they went on and they made it happen. So, yeah, you're right, Nick Saban. The Big Ten does have an edge right now, because the Big Ten can go out and get talent just like the SEC could 10 years ago. As far as the geography thing, sure, players aren't staying home as much as they used to before. But it's not just geography. It's the fact that teams are having a more equal playing field now with what they're allowed to spend, and the Big Ten just plain has more money to spend from generational wealth, stuff like that. And that was a good point by Nick Saban there at the end. So I'll give him his flowers there. So anyway, what do you think? You think same thing? as me, you think something different. Love to know your thoughts. You think that Pat McAfee had it right with Penn State. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to point on with Penn State. So the problem with looking at Penn State and being like, well, they just have all this money. Penn State does not have all this money. Penn State has a really they have a really hard time with getting the money and then using it on the football program because of things that have happened historically with that football program and decisions that have been made by the university that donors and alumni have not liked. You can connect your own dots there if you'd like. But some of those donors go out and they spend it on hockey. They go out and spend it on, whatever else there might be out there. I mean, there's tons of sports that Penn State's good at outside of football. So other sports that they're going out there because they have the money, but they're withholding it because they don't like decisions that the program has made in other areas. So then they donate it so that way they can get NIL to other areas instead. So while yes, Penn State does have money, they're also getting money withheld, but they can still go down to the South and get dudes because it's a more even playing field now. Right? And that's a huge thing. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Have a good one.